My ex-husband burning my belongings gave me a fresh start. The smell hit me before I even got out of my Honda Civic, acrid smoke mixed with something that made my stomach lurch. It was 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in October, and I'd only driven to our old house on Maple Street to grab the last few boxes from the garage. The divorce had been finalized for exactly 12 days. Marcus's silver pickup truck sat in the driveway like a middle finger pointed directly at me. I should have turned around right then. Should have called my lawyer, Janet, and told her to handle it. But something about the smoke made me walk around to the backyard instead, my sensible teacher flats crunching through the fallen leaves we used to rake together every autumn. The fire was still smoldering. My ex-husband stood next to what used to be my grandmother's hope chest, holding a beer and staring at the flames with a kind of satisfaction I'd only seen on his face twice before, once when he got promoted to regional manager, and once when he told me about Brittany from accounting. "You're too late," Marcus said without turning around. His voice carried that same smug tone he'd used when he explained why he needed to keep the house in the divorce settlement. "Should have picked up your junk sooner." The hope chest, 1940s cedar, worth at least $800, was now a skeleton of charred wood. Around it, I could make out the twisted remains of my college textbooks, some old photo albums, my grandmother's china hutch that hadn't fit in my new apartment, and what looked like the remnants of my collection of vintage postcards. "My grandmother's jewelry box was in that chest," I said, though my voice came out steadier than I expected. Marcus finally turned around, his pale blue eyes bright with malicious joy. "Whoops. Guess you should have thought about that before you decided to screw me over in court." I pulled out my phone and started recording. This is Tuesday, October 15th, 3:49 p.m. Marcus Chen has burned my personal property in the backyard of 4247 Maple Street. "Stop recording me." He lunged forward, but I stepped back, keeping the camera steady on the smoldering pile. "Is that my grandmother's china cabinet?" I panned across the destruction, cataloging each item I could identify. The antique sewing machine. My childhood dollhouse. The vintage cookbook collection I'd inherited from my aunt. And the postcard collection from the 1920s? "I don't know what you're talking about." But his grin said everything. What Marcus didn't know, what his beer-fueled revenge fantasy had blinded him to, was that I'd been married to him for 8 years. I knew exactly how petty he could be. The truly irreplaceable things, my parents' wedding album, my actual grandmother's jewelry, the family photos that couldn't be replaced, had been moved to my new apartment weeks ago, right after I found the text messages from Brittany. Everything burning in that backyard had been carefully chosen. Valuable enough to hurt him legally, meaningless enough that I could watch it burn without crying. "You know what, Marcus? Thank you." His grin faltered. "What?" I said thank you. I stopped recording and smiled at him, really smiled, maybe for the first time in years. "You just made this so much easier." I walked back to my car, already mentally composing the email to Janet and my insurance company. Behind me, Marcus shouted something about how I'd never get a penny from him, but his voice was getting smaller with every step I took toward my real life. The drive to Janet's law office took exactly 18 minutes, but I spent every one of them on speakerphone with my insurance agent, Patricia Kowalski from State Farm. She'd handled our homeowner's policy for 3 years, back when our meant something. "Sarah, I need you to slow down," Patricia said as I pulled into the parking garage. "You're saying your ex-husband deliberately destroyed your personal property?" "I have it on video, Patricia. He's standing right there next to the fire, admitting he burned my grandmother's hope chest because I screwed him over in court." His exact words. The silence stretched long enough that I thought the call had dropped. "Then, how much are we talking about, ballpark?" I'd been doing the math since Maple Street. The hope chest was appraised at $800 last year for the divorce proceedings. The china cabinet was $1,200. The vintage postcard collection. I paused, remembering the look on the antique dealer's face when he'd evaluated it. Conservative estimate? $15,000. $15,000 in postcards? 1920s correspondence from the Titanic sister ships. My great-uncle was a maritime enthusiast. That was a lie, but Marcus didn't know that. I'd actually bought them 6 months ago from an estate sale, specifically because they looked old and expensive and would photograph while burning. The dealer had assured me they'd be worth $15,000 in 5 years. I paid $300. "Sarah, I have to ask, do you have any documentation of these items' value?" Every piece was cataloged during our divorce proceedings. My lawyer has all the appraisal documents. Another truth that served me well. Janet had been thorough about documenting assets, even ones I was planning to abandon. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in Janet's conference room, watching her replay the video on her laptop. Janet Kim had the kind of sharp, angular face that made opposing counsel nervous, and right now she looked like a hawk spotting prey. "He's drunk," she said, pausing on Marcus's face. "Look at his eyes. And he's admitting to destruction of property on camera." She looked up at me with something close to admiration. "Sarah, did you plan this?" "I planned to protect myself. I never planned for him to be stupid enough to film a confession. The insurance payout alone will be substantial, but this opens up other possibilities." Janet pulled up a legal pad and started writing. "Intentional infliction of emotional distress. Destruction of property. And if we can prove he did this specifically to circumvent the divorce settlement." My phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. Asterisk, hope you enjoyed your little show. Checked your apartment mailbox today. Oops, asterisk. I felt the blood drain from my face. "Janet, I need to go." "Sarah, what's wrong?" I showed her the text. She read it twice, her expression darkening. "He's at your apartment?" "The mailboxes are in the lobby. Anyone can get in." But even as I said it, I knew Marcus better than that. He wouldn't stop at mailbox tampering. The fire had been an appetizer. "We're calling the police. Right now." Janet was already reaching for her phone. "Wait." I stood up, my teacher brain shifting into problem-solving mode. If he's escalating this fast, we need to be smart about it. One video of him burning my stuff is evidence. But if we can document a pattern of harassment. Janet's smile was sharp as a blade. "You want to let him dig his own grave deeper. I want to make sure he never has the chance to do this to anyone else." My phone buzzed again. Another text from the same number. Asterisk Brittany says hi BTW. We're celebrating asterisk. Perfect. I screenshot it and sent it to Janet. How do you feel about surveillance cameras? Janet asked. The security camera system cost me $347.99 from Best Buy, but watching Marcus stumble around my apartment building's parking lot at 11:23 p.m. made every penny worth it. I positioned my laptop by the window of my second-floor unit on Riverside Drive, giving me a perfect view of his increasingly erratic behavior. He's been circling the building for 20 minutes, I whispered into my phone. Janet had insisted I keep her on the line after the third threatening text message arrived at 9:45 p.m. Asterisk know where you live now. Nice place. Shame if something happened to it asterisk. Are you getting clear footage? Janet's voice was crisp despite the late hour. Crystal clear. He's got a baseball bat now. I watched Marcus pull a Louisville Slugger from his truck bed and take a practice swing at nothing. He's definitely drunk. Look at how he's weaving. Sarah, I need you to call 911. This has moved beyond property damage. But something held me back. Maybe it was 8 years of marriage to a man who always managed to talk his way out of consequences, or maybe it was the way he'd looked so satisfied standing next to my burning belongings. Give me 5 more minutes. If he actually does anything to the building, we'll have him on felony charges instead of just harassment. Marcus stumbled toward the main entrance, bat dragging behind him on the asphalt. My building had decent security, key fob access, cameras in the lobby, but I knew he was too drunk and angry to think about that. He pressed his face against the glass door, cupping his hands to peer inside. Then my downstairs neighbor's porch light flicked on. Mrs. Nguyen stepped outside in a quilted robe and slippers, holding what looked like a cordless phone. She was 73 years old and had brought me homemade pho when I'd moved in crying 6 weeks ago. Seeing her face to face with my drunk ex-husband made my blood freeze. Call them now, I told Janet, already dialing 911 on my second phone. 911, what's your emergency? My ex-husband is outside my apartment building with a baseball bat, threatening my elderly neighbor. 1247, Riverside Drive, apartment 2B. Through my window, I could see Mrs. Nguyen gesturing firmly at Marcus, probably telling him to leave in the same no-nonsense tone she used on the teenagers who skateboard too close to her flower beds. Marcus swayed, gripping the bat tighter. Ma'am, are you in a safe location? I'm inside my apartment. But there's a 73-year-old woman confronting him in the parking lot. The dispatcher's voice sharpened. Units are en route. Stay on the line. Marcus raised his voice loud enough that I could hear him through my closed windows. Where is she? I know she's here. Mrs. Nguyen stepped back toward her door, but she didn't retreat inside. Instead, she raised her phone, not to call someone, but to record him. My neighbor, barely 5 feet tall in her slippers, was gathering evidence. Janet, you still there? I'm here. What's happening? Mrs. Nguyen is filming him. And Marcus just noticed. He lurched toward her, bat raised, and for a terrifying moment I thought I was about to witness something horrible. But red and blue lights suddenly flooded the parking lot, and Marcus froze like a deer in headlights. 2 patrol cars pulled in from opposite directions. Marcus looked around wildly, then made the stupidest decision of his life. He ran. With the baseball bat. While drunk. Directly toward the officer getting out of the first patrol car. Ma'am? The 911 dispatcher's voice seemed to come from far away. Are you still there? Yeah, I managed, watching Marcus faceplant into the hood of the police cruiser. I think we're good now. The booking process took 3 hours, but I waited in the police station lobby until every form was signed. Officer Martinez, who'd tackled Marcus in the parking lot, kept bringing me updates like I was an anxious relative instead of the victim. He's being charged with public intoxication, criminal trespass, and assault with a deadly weapon, Martinez said, settling into the plastic chair next to me. The assault charge is for threatening Mrs. Nguyen. That's a felony. What about the baseball bat? Deadly weapon enhancement. Plus, we ran his plates, he's been driving on a suspended license for 2 months. Martinez shook his head. Your ex-husband really committed to making this worse for himself. Janet arrived at 1:15 a.m. with a folder thick enough to choke a horse and the kind of energy that made me understand why she charged $400 an hour. Sarah, please tell me you got everything on camera. Every stumble, every threat, and the moment he charged Officer Martinez with a baseball bat. I pulled up the footage on my laptop. Mrs. Nguyen got the part where he threatened her, too. She's already emailed me the video. Mrs. Nguyen sounds like my kind of witness. Janet sat down and opened her folder. Because we're going to need her. Marcus made bail 20 minutes ago. The relief I'd been feeling since watching him get handcuffed evaporated. He's out already? His girlfriend posted it. Brittany Henderson works at Morrison Financial Group. Janet's smile was razor sharp. Apparently she doesn't know about Marcus's previous domestic violence arrest from 2019. I stared at her. What previous arrest? Oh, you didn't know? Janet flipped through her papers. Marcus Chen, arrested for assault during a domestic disturbance call at 4247 Maple Street. Charges were dropped when the complainant, that would be you, Sarah, declined to press charges. The memory hit me like cold water. The fight about his mother visiting for Christmas. Marcus throwing my coffee mug against the kitchen wall, the ceramic shards cutting my bare feet. The neighbors calling police about the shouting. I told them it was an accident. That the mug slipped. According to the police report, you had defensive wounds on your arms and were visibly shaken. The responding officer noted that the damage pattern was inconsistent with an accident. Janet looked up from the file. Why didn't you tell me about this during the divorce? Because I'd spent 5 years convincing myself it only happened once. Because Marcus had cried and promised it would never happen again. Because I'd been too ashamed to admit that I'd lied to the police to protect him. I thought it wasn't relevant. Sarah, this changes everything. We're not just talking about property damage anymore. This establishes a pattern of escalating domestic violence. Janet was writing furiously. With tonight's charges, we can file for an emergency restraining order first thing Monday morning. My phone buzzed. Text message from Marcus's number, this isn't over. Then another, Brittany thinks you are lying about everything. And another, gonna prove what a lying bitch you are. I showed Janet the messages. She photographed each one with her own phone, then looked at me seriously. Sarah, I need you to understand something. Marcus isn't just angry about the divorce anymore. He's spiraling, and you're his target. Where are you planning to sleep tonight? My apartment. I have the security cameras now, and Mrs. Nguyen said she'd keep an eye out. Absolutely not. Janet closed her folder. You're coming home with me. We'll get you some clothes, and you can stay in my guest room until the restraining order goes through. Janet, I can't just. You can and you will. Because in 20 years of practicing family law, I've seen how the story ends when women try to tough it out alone. Her voice softened. Besides, my husband makes incredible pancakes, and you look like you haven't eaten a real meal in weeks. She was right. I'd been living on coffee and granola bars since the fire, too focused on documentation and legal strategy to remember basic human needs. Okay, I said. But I'm paying you extra for this. Damn right you are. I don't run a charity. Janet stood up and shouldered her briefcase. But Sarah? By the time I'm done with Marcus Chen, you're going to own a lot more than just an insurance payout. Janet's guest room had blackout curtains and Egyptian cotton sheets that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget, but I still couldn't sleep. Every car door slamming in her upscale neighborhood made me bolt upright, checking my phone for new messages from Marcus. At 3:47 a.m., I gave up and padded to the kitchen in borrowed pajamas. Janet was already there, laptop open, surrounded by legal documents and a pot of coffee that smelled like it could wake the dead. Couldn't sleep either? She looked up from a document titled Chen vs. Chen Amended Complaint. Too wired. I poured myself a mug and sat across from her. What are you working on? Your new lawsuit. We're going after Marcus for intentional infliction of emotional distress, destruction of property, and harassment. But I found something interesting in his employment records. Janet turned her laptop toward me. Morrison Financial Group has a morality clause in their management contracts. Employees in positions of trust can be terminated for criminal behavior that reflects poorly on the company. I stared at the screen. You think he could lose his job? I think a regional manager getting arrested for felony assault with a deadly weapon might be exactly the kind of thing that triggers a morality clause. Janet's smile was predatory. Especially when his girlfriend works in the same office and posted his bail. My phone buzzed on the table. We both froze. Text from Marcus, asterisk no you are at your lawyer's house. 247 Oak Ridge Drive right, asterisk. Jesus Christ, Janet breathed. How does he know my address? My hands were shaking as I screenshot the message. He's escalating faster than we thought. I'm calling Detective Morrison right now. This is stalking. Janet was already dialing. And we're filing that restraining order today, not Monday. But as she spoke to the detective, a horrible realization crept over me. Marcus knowing Janet's address wasn't just scary, it was strategic. He was showing me he could find me anywhere, reach anyone in my life. Another text, asterisk Brittany helped me look up your lawyer. Public records are fun asterisk. Then, asterisk maybe I'll pay Mrs. Nguyen a visit tomorrow. Sweet old lady asterisk. I showed Janet the messages. Her face went white. He's threatening my client's neighbor now. Detective, I need officers at 1247 Riverside Drive immediately. While Janet coordinated with police, I called Mrs. Nguyen. It went straight to voicemail, of course it did, it was nearly 4 a.m. Mrs. Nguyen, this is Sarah from 2B. My ex-husband might try to contact you or come to the building again. Please don't answer your door for anyone tonight, and call 911 if you see a silver pickup truck. I'm so sorry he's dragging you into this. Janet hung up and looked at me grimly. Detective Morrison is sending a patrol car to your building, and another one here. Marcus violated his bail conditions the moment he sent that first threat. They'll pick him up as soon as they find him. What if they don't find him in time? Then we make sure he regrets every decision that led him to this point. Janet pulled up a new document on her laptop. I've been thinking about your insurance claim. $15,000 for vintage postcards is a good start, but what about pain and suffering? Emotional distress? Loss of irreplaceable family heirlooms? How much are we talking about? With the pattern of domestic violence, the escalating harassment, and now stalking across county lines? Janet's fingers flew across the keyboard. I'm thinking we start negotiations at $150,000 and see what his lawyer says. My coffee mug slipped from my numb fingers, shattering against Janet's marble floor. $150,000? Janet, he doesn't have that kind of money. No, but his insurance does. Homeowner's liability coverage is usually $300,000 minimum. Janet didn't even look up from her typing. And if his insurance won't pay, we'll garnish his wages for the next decade. Outside, a car engine revved loudly in the pre-dawn darkness. We both froze, listening as it circled the block once, twice, then faded into the distance. Sarah, Janet said quietly, how well do you know Marcus's friends? Because drunk and stupid is one thing, but this level of surveillance suggests he's getting help. The question hit me like ice water. His friends? I tried to think through 8 years of marriage, but came up empty. Marcus doesn't really have friends. Just work buddies he drinks with sometimes. What about family? Brothers, cousins, anyone who might help him track people down? His brother Danny lives in Phoenix. His parents are in Florida. I paused, remembering something. But there's his cousin Rick. He works in IT for the county assessor's office. Janet's typing stopped. County assessor's office has access to property records. Real estate databases. She looked up at me with dawning horror. Sarah, Rick could have looked up my address, your apartment lease, even Mrs. Nguyen's personal information. My phone rang, making us both jump. Unknown number. Don't answer it, Janet said, but I was already swiping to accept. Sarah? Sarah, is that you? The voice was slurred but familiar. Danny, Marcus's brother. Danny? It's 4 in the morning. Why are you? Listen to me. Marcus called me an hour ago, completely wasted. He's talking crazy shit about burning your stuff and teaching you a lesson. Danny's voice was tight with panic. Sarah, I think he's going to do something really stupid. What did he say exactly? He keeps talking about how you planned this whole thing, how you made him look like an idiot. And he's with Rick. They've been drinking and looking up stuff on Rick's work computer. Danny paused, and I could hear traffic in the background. Sarah, I'm driving to Oregon right now. I've been on the road for 3 hours. But I don't think I'm going to get there in time. Janet grabbed the phone from my hand and hit speaker. Danny, this is Sarah's attorney, Janet Kim. What specifically did Marcus say he was planning? He said something about Sarah's insurance scam and how he was going to prove she set him up. Then Rick started talking about addresses and how easy it was to find people if you knew the right databases to check. Danny's voice cracked. Look, Marcus has been getting worse since the divorce. Drinking more, talking about revenge shit. But tonight he sounds dangerous. Where are they now? Janet was taking notes furiously. I don't know. Marcus hung up on me when I told him he was being an idiot. But before he did, I heard Rick talking about checking out the lawyer's house first. Janet and I looked at each other. Danny, we need you to call Detective Morrison at Riverside Police immediately. She rattled off the number. Tell him everything you just told us. Already called 911 from the road. But Sarah, Danny's voice got serious. Marcus found some papers Rick printed out. Property records, addresses, even photos from Google Street View. They know what cars you drive, where you work, probably your daily schedule. My stomach dropped. How could Rick access all that? County databases are connected to everything. Property records, vehicle registrations, employment records for public employees. Since I worked at Roosevelt Elementary, my salary and employment history were public information. Rick's been helping Marcus build some kind of file on you. Janet was already packing up her laptop. We're leaving. Now. Danny, how far out are you? Still 4 hours, maybe 5. But listen, I know my brother. When he gets like this, he doesn't stop until he feels like he's won something. Danny paused. He's not just trying to scare you anymore, Sarah. He wants to destroy your life the same way he thinks you destroyed his. The line went dead just as Janet's security alarm started blaring. Through the living room window, I could see headlights in the driveway. Not moving, just sitting there. Watching. Basement, Janet whispered, grabbing my arm. Now. But as we headed for the stairs, my phone lit up with a text from Marcus. Asterisk found something interesting in your insurance paperwork, Sarah. Those postcards you claimed were worth $15K? Got the receipt right here. $300 asterisk. Then another message, this one with a photo attached. Asterisk fraud is a felony. Wonder what State Farm will think about this asterisk. The photo showed a crumpled receipt from Henderson Estate Sales, dated 6 months ago. $300 for miscellaneous vintage postcards, circa 1920s. Janet looked at the image and went pale. Sarah. Please tell me you can explain this. The receipt stared back at me from my phone screen like evidence at a murder trial. Janet's basement felt smaller with each passing second, the weight of Marcus's discovery pressing down on both of us. I can explain, I said, though my voice sounded hollow even to me. The dealer told me they'd appreciate to $15,000 in 5 years. I wasn't lying about their potential value. Janet's expression was unreadable in the dim basement light. Sarah, insurance fraud is a federal crime. If Marcus can prove you deliberately inflated the value of items you knew he might destroy. That's not what happened. But even as I said it, I could hear how it sounded. Woman buys postcards for $300, leaves them where vindictive ex-husband will find them, then claims they're worth 50 times more. I bought them as an investment. The Maritime Collector Market. Stop talking. Janet held up her hand. Right now, before you say anything else that could be used against you later. My phone buzzed with another message from Marcus. Asterisk Rick found more stuff. Insurance adjuster gonna love this asterisk. Then a photo of what looked like printouts from my bank account, showing the Henderson Estate Sales transaction highlighted in yellow. How the hell had Rick accessed my banking records? Janet, they're in my financial accounts somehow. She looked at the image and cursed under her breath. Rick's access goes deeper than property records. County IT can cross-reference databases, if he's willing to break federal law. She was already dialing. Detective Morrison? It's Janet Kim. Marcus Chan and his accomplice have gained unauthorized access to my client's banking records. We need them arrested immediately. Upstairs, something heavy slammed against the front door. We both froze, listening to the sound of splintering wood and Marcus's voice shouting, I know you're in there. Gonna show everyone what a lying bitch you are. He's breaking in, I whispered. Janet was speaking rapidly into her phone. Detective, he's actively breaking into my home. 247 Oak Ridge Drive. Armed and dangerous. She hung up and grabbed my arm. There's a back exit through the utility room. But as we moved toward the rear of the basement, I heard a sound that made my blood freeze, Marcus talking to someone else. Rick, check the garage. Her car's here, so she didn't go far. There were 2 of them now. And they had us surrounded. My phone rang. Danny again. Sarah, please tell me you're somewhere safe. They're breaking into my lawyer's house right now, I whispered. Danny, your brother has completely snapped. I'm 20 minutes out. Just called the police again and told them Marcus is armed. Danny's voice was tight with panic. Rick texted me an hour ago, some bullshit about teaching you a lesson. I think they planned this whole thing. Through the basement ceiling, we could hear furniture being overturned. Marcus was trashing Janet's house the same way he'd burned my belongings, methodical destruction designed to hurt. Sarah. Marcus's voice carried down through the floorboards. I found your purse. And look what's inside, insurance adjuster's business card. Patricia Kowalski, $15,000 claim. Janet grabbed a baseball bat from her husband's workbench. When the police get here, I want you to run straight to them. Don't try to explain about the postcards, don't try to defend yourself. Just run. What about you? I'm going to make sure Marcus Chen regrets every decision that brought him to my house at 4:30 in the morning. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. But upstairs, the destruction was getting louder too. Glass breaking. Marcus shouting about fraud and lies and making me pay. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Asterisk, this is Rick. Our lawyer friend has nice stuff. Shame if something happened to it, asterisk. Then another message with a photo attachment. Janet's family room, completely destroyed. Furniture overturned, papers scattered everywhere, her husband's golf trophy smashed against the wall. They're destroying everything. I showed Janet the image. Just like he did to my stuff. Janet's grip tightened on the baseball bat. The difference is, my security cameras are recording every second of this. And unlike your postcards, everything they're destroying actually is worth what I'll claim it's worth. The sirens were getting louder, but Marcus's voice was getting more unhinged. Sarah. I know you can hear me. You think you're so smart with your fake receipts and your insurance scam. Something crashed directly over our heads, followed by Rick's voice. Marcus, we need to go. Cops are coming. Not until I find her. Janet looked at me grimly. Sarah, whatever happens next, remember this, Marcus just committed multiple felonies on camera while shouting about financial evidence. Even if there are questions about your insurance claim, he's done. The basement door exploded open, and Marcus stumbled down the stairs with a crowbar in his hand and murder in his eyes. Marcus stumbled on the third step, the crowbar clanging against the wooden banister as he caught himself. In the dim basement light, his face looked gaunt and wild. This wasn't just drunk Marcus anymore. This was someone who'd crossed a line he couldn't uncross. Found you, he slurred, raising the crowbar. Thought you were so fucking clever with your little insurance scam. Janet stepped forward with the baseball bat, putting herself between Marcus and me. Marcus Chen, you are trespassing on my property. The police are already here. Don't care. His eyes were fixed on me with laser focus. Rick showed me everything, Sarah. Every lie you told. That receipt for $300? I'm gonna make sure State Farm sees it. The sirens outside were deafening now, but Marcus didn't seem to hear them. He took another unsteady step down, crowbar dragging behind him. You made me look like a fool. Burned all that junk you planted, thinking it was worth something. Planted? The word slipped out before I could stop it. Don't play dumb. Marcus's voice cracked with rage. The postcards, the china cabinet you never even liked, all that antique shit you suddenly left behind? You set me up. Through the chaos in my mind, one clear thought emerged. He was confessing. Marcus was admitting, on what I hoped was still recording security footage, that he deliberately burned my property in retaliation. Marcus, you need to leave. Right now. Janet's voice was steady, but I could see her knuckles wide around the bat handle. Heavy footsteps thundered across the floor above us, followed by shouting. Police. Anyone in the house, identify yourself. Down here. Janet yelled. Basement. We have an intruder. Marcus spun toward the stairs, crowbar raised, just as two officers appeared at the top. Drop the weapon. Now. For a moment that felt like hours, Marcus stood frozen. I could see him calculating, drunk, cornered, holding a crowbar in someone else's basement while police officers aimed their weapons at him. Then Rick's voice carried from somewhere upstairs. Marcus, they got me. Just run. That snapped Marcus out of his paralysis. Instead of dropping the crowbar, instead of surrendering, he turned back to me with desperate fury. This is all your fault. Everything was fine until you. Drop the weapon. The officer's voice was sharp with authority. Marcus raised the crowbar higher, and for a terrifying second I thought he was going to charge. But Janet moved faster than I'd ever seen anyone move, swinging the baseball bat in a perfect arc that connected with his wrist. The crowbar went flying, clattering into the far corner of the basement. Marcus screamed and dropped to his knees, cradling his arm. Suspect is down, one of the officers called, already descending the stairs. We need paramedics. As the officer swarmed Marcus, reading him his rights while he moaned about his wrist, my phone buzzed with a text from Danny. Asterisk just pulled into the driveway. Holy shit, Sarah, there are 6 cop cars here, asterisk. Then another message, this one from Patricia at State Farm, asterisk Sarah, got your voicemail about additional documentation. Can you come in Monday morning at 9 a.m.? Bring all receipts and appraisals, asterisk. I stared at the insurance message, my stomach dropping. Marcus had been right about one thing, the $300 receipt was going to be a problem. But as I watched him being handcuffed while officers read him his rights for breaking and entering, assault with a deadly weapon, and stalking, I realized he'd made the same mistake twice. Marcus was so focused on hurting me that he destroyed himself in the process. Sarah. Janet was standing beside me, bat still in hand, watching Marcus being led upstairs by 2 officers. We need to talk about that receipt. But first, are you okay? I took inventory. Physically unharmed. Legally complicated. But watching Marcus disappear up those basement stairs in handcuffs, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Relief. Yeah, I said, meaning it for the first time in weeks. I think I'm going to be fine. The paperwork at the police station took until 7 a.m., but Detective Morrison made sure I had copies of everything, Marcus's arrest report, Rick's charges for unauthorized computer access, even photos of Janet's destroyed living room that would become evidence in what was shaping up to be a very expensive lawsuit. Your ex-husband is looking at serious time, Detective Morrison said, sliding a thick folder across his desk. Breaking and entering, assault with a deadly weapon, stalking across county lines, destruction of property. His cousin Rick is facing federal charges for hacking into county databases to access your financial records. Danny had arrived at the station an hour earlier, looking exhausted and ashamed. He'd spent most of that time apologizing to anyone who'd listen and trying to convince the detective that Marcus had always been the family screw-up, but never violent like this. What's his bail going to be? I asked. Judge Robertson is handling arraignments this morning. Given the escalation and the fact that he violated his previous bail conditions? Detective Morrison shrugged. I'd guess 50,000, minimum. Maybe more if the DA pushes for flight risk. My phone had been buzzing constantly with messages from coworkers who'd seen the news coverage, but one text made my stomach drop. From Brittany Henderson, asterisk Marcus told me about your insurance fraud. People should know what kind of person you really are, asterisk. I showed the message to Janet, who'd been reviewing paperwork with the intensity of someone preparing for war. Girlfriend's going to be a problem, she said. Especially if she starts running her mouth at Morrison Financial Group. Can she prove anything? She can prove you bought postcards for $300 and claimed they were worth $15,000. Whether that constitutes fraud depends on a lot of factors we'll need to discuss. Janet looked up from her notes. But Sarah, there's something else. Detective Morrison found more than just financial records in Rick's computer files. She pulled out a printed spreadsheet that made my blood run cold. It was a detailed surveillance log, my daily schedule, my route to work, the grocery store I used, even Mrs. Nguyen's personal information including her social security number and medical records. They've been stalking you for weeks, Janet said quietly. This goes way beyond property destruction. Rick used county database access to build a complete profile of your life. The spreadsheet showed entries dating back to 3 weeks after my divorce was finalized. Marcus had been planning this whole thing since the day our marriage legally ended. There's more. Detective Morrison flipped to another page. Rick kept detailed notes about your insurance policy, your work schedule, even your therapy appointments. Somehow he accessed your medical records too. How is that legal? It's not. Rick's looking at federal charges that could put him away for 10 years. The detective's expression was grim. But Marcus used this information to time everything perfectly. He knew when you'd discover the fire, knew when you'd call your insurance company, probably even knew you'd end up at Janet's house. Danny looked up from his coffee, face pale. You're saying Marcus planned all of this? The fire, yes. But I don't think he planned to get arrested twice in 24 hours. Janet was already writing notes for what I assumed was another lawsuit. The break-in at my house was pure rage. That's where he made his real mistake. My phone rang, Patricia from State Farm. I looked at Janet, who nodded grimly. Patricia, I was going to call you. Sarah, honey, we need to talk. I've been getting calls this morning from someone claiming you filed a fraudulent claim. Patricia's voice was carefully neutral. Can you come in today instead of Monday? And bring everything, receipts, appraisals, documentation, anything you have about those postcards. Of course. What time works? How about 10 a.m.? And Sarah? You might want to bring your lawyer. After I hung up, Janet looked at me seriously. That receipt is going to be a problem. But Marcus breaking into my house to steal evidence might be a bigger problem for him than your postcards are for you. What do you mean? Burglary for the purpose of interfering with an insurance investigation is its own felony. Plus, everything he stole is inadmissible now because it was obtained illegally. Janet's smile was sharp as broken glass. Marcus just turned himself from a witness into a criminal defendant. Detective Morrison stood up, gathering his files. We'll know more after arraignment. But ladies? I'd stay away from both Morrison Financial Group and anywhere Brittany Henderson might be for the next few days. This thing isn't over yet. As we walked out of the police station into the morning sunlight, Janet put her hand on my shoulder. Sarah, I need you to be completely honest with me about those postcards. Because in 3 hours, we're going to sit across from an insurance investigator who's going to ask some very pointed questions. I took a deep breath, thinking about Marcus in a jail cell and Rick facing federal charges and Brittany probably calling in sick to work so she could figure out how to spin this whole mess. The truth is, I said, I'm not sure it matters anymore. The State Farm office on Commercial Street had the kind of fluorescent lighting that made everyone look guilty, and Patricia Kowalski's expression wasn't helping matters. She'd laid out the Henderson estate sales receipt, my insurance claim form, and what looked like a dozen printed emails across her desk like evidence at a trial. Sarah, I've been doing this for 15 years, Patricia said, her voice carefully professional. I've never had a claimant's ex-husband break into someone's house to steal documentation before calling me at 6 a.m. to report insurance fraud. Janet leaned forward in her chair. Patricia, you're aware that Marcus Chen is currently in jail for breaking and entering, assault with a deadly weapon, and stalking, correct? I am. But the math doesn't lie. Patricia tapped the receipt with her pen. $300 to $15,000 is a pretty significant appreciation in 6 months. My mouth felt dry as sandpaper. The dealer told me maritime collectibles were a growing market. The Titanic connection. Sarah. Patricia's voice was gentle but firm. I called Henderson Estate Sales this morning. They told me those postcards were reproduction prints made in 1987. Not authentic 1920s correspondence. The words hit me like a physical blow. Janet went completely still beside me. That's impossible, I managed. Mr. Henderson showed me the authentication. Mr. Henderson died 3 years ago. His nephew runs the business now. Patricia pulled out another sheet of paper. Here's the original estate inventory. Novelty postcard set, Titanic Memorial Series, manufactured 1987 by Maritime Nostalgia, Incorporated, retail value approximately $15. I stared at the document, my entire insurance strategy crumbling in real time. But the appraisal. What appraisal, Sarah? Janet's voice was sharp. You told me every piece was cataloged during divorce proceedings, but I never saw any appraisal documents for postcards. The fluorescent lights seemed to get brighter, exposing every crack in the story I built. I thought they were authentic. The whole collection looked so old, and when Marcus burned them. When you left them for Marcus to burn, Patricia corrected. Because according to your ex-husband, you specifically told him those items were just junk taking up space when you moved out. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, asterisk this is Brittany. Marcus told me you admitted the whole thing was fake. Enjoy prison asterisk. Janet saw the message and her face went white. Patricia, we need to discuss this privately with our client. I'm afraid that's not possible. I've already filed a report with our fraud investigation unit. Patricia began stacking the papers. Sarah, I need you to understand this situation. If our investigators determine you deliberately filed a false claim, we're required to report it to the district attorney's office. But Marcus destroyed my property illegally, I said, hearing the desperation in my own voice. Even if the postcards weren't worth what I thought, he still committed arson. That's between you and the police. Our concern is the insurance claim. Patricia stood up, signaling the meeting was over. You'll be hearing from our investigation team within 48 hours. I'd recommend getting your documentation in order. Outside in Janet's car, we sat in stunned silence for several minutes. Finally, Janet turned to me with the expression I'd been dreading since this whole nightmare started. Sarah, I need you to tell me exactly what you knew about those postcards and when you knew it. Traffic moved past us on Commercial Street, normal people doing normal things while my life imploded in a State Farm parking lot. I bought them because they looked valuable. Old and official. I thought if Marcus burned them out of spite. You thought you could profit from his predictable behavior. Janet's voice was flat. Sarah, that's textbook insurance fraud. And now Marcus has witnesses saying you admitted it was fake. My phone rang. Detective Morrison. Sarah, we have a problem. Brittany Henderson just walked into the station with a recording. The recording played through Detective Morrison's desk speaker with crystal clarity, my own voice, slightly muffled but unmistakably mine, saying words I didn't remember speaking. Marcus is so predictable when he's angry. He'll probably burn everything I left behind just to hurt me. Good thing I moved anything actually valuable weeks ago. Then Marcus's voice, slurred with alcohol, so that stuff in the garage is just junk? Pretty much. Old postcards I bought at an estate sale, some furniture that doesn't fit my new place. Nothing I'd actually miss. The recording stopped. Detective Morrison looked across his desk at Janet and me with the kind of expression cops reserve for people who've just confessed to crimes they didn't know they were committing. When was this recorded? Janet asked, though her voice suggested she already knew the answer wasn't going to help us. September 18th, Marcus's phone, auto-uploaded to cloud storage. Detective Morrison pulled up a file on his computer. Brittany Henderson provided his login credentials. There are actually 14 recordings spanning 3 weeks, all conversations between Marcus and Sarah during property division. My mind raced back to September 18th, 2 weeks before the fire. Marcus had insisted on meeting at a coffee shop downtown to discuss the last few items I'd be taking from the house. I thought he was finally being civilized about the divorce. He was recording me without my consent, I said. That's illegal wiretapping. Not in Oregon. Single-party consent state. Detective Morrison clicked through more files. Sarah, there are recordings of you specifically mentioning the postcard's purchase price, your insurance policy limits, and what you called Marcus's nuclear option personality. Janet was taking notes furiously, but I could see the defeat in her posture. How many people have heard these recordings? Brittany played them for her supervisor at Morrison Financial Group this morning. Word is, they've suspended Marcus pending investigation, but the recordings are circulating through the office. Detective Morrison's expression was sympathetic but professional. Sarah, the district attorney's office is reviewing this for potential fraud charges. My phone buzzed with a notification from Facebook. Someone had tagged me in a post. Against my better judgment, I looked. Brittany Henderson had shared an audio clip with the caption, *when your cheating ex-wife admits to insurance fraud on tape. Some people have no shame. #truth, #justice, #karma is real *. The post already had 47 shares and dozens of comments from people I'd never met calling me everything from scheming bitch to criminal mastermind. She posted it on social media. I showed Detective Morrison and Janet. This is harassment. Actually, it's evidence, Detective Morrison said grimly. And now it's public record. Sarah, I have to ask, did you deliberately purchase items with the intention of claiming inflated value if they were destroyed? The question hung in the air like smoke from Marcus's fire. I could lie, claim ignorance, insist it was all a misunderstanding. Or I could tell the truth and face whatever consequences came with it. I bought things I thought looked valuable, knowing Marcus might destroy them, I said slowly. But I genuinely believe the postcards were worth more than I paid. The estate sale dealer. The dealer who's been dead for 3 years, Janet interrupted. Sarah, who actually sold you those postcards? The memory crystallized with horrible clarity. A teenage kid, maybe the nephew Patricia had mentioned, bored and eager to close the sale. Some kid. He barely looked at what I was buying. Detective Morrison leaned back in his chair. So no expert appraisal, no authentication, just your assumption that 1987 reproductions were 1920s originals. When you put it like that. That's how the DA's office is going to put it. Janet closed her notebook. Sarah, we need to discuss plea options. The word plea hit me like cold water. 3 days ago, I'd been the victim. Now I was potentially looking at criminal charges while Marcus, violent, stalking, property-destroying Marcus, might end up looking like the wronged party. My phone rang. Unknown number with a Portland area code. Ms. Chen? This is Amanda Foster from Channel 12 News. We'd like to get your comment on the insurance fraud allegations. I hung up immediately, but the damage was clear. This wasn't just a legal problem anymore, it was about to become a public spectacle. Detective Morrison stood up. Sarah, you're not under arrest yet, but I'd recommend staying close to home while this gets sorted out. And maybe staying off social media. As we left the police station, Janet grabbed my arm. Sarah, there's something else we need to discuss. Marcus might be in jail, but if the DA decides to prosecute you for fraud, he could end up being the state star witness. The irony was perfect and horrible. The man who tried to destroy my life might be the one who actually succeeds. The Channel 12 news van was parked outside Roosevelt Elementary when I arrived for work Monday morning, and I knew my teaching career was about to become collateral damage in Marcus's war against me. Principal Martinez met me in the parking lot, her expression carefully neutral in the way that meant HR had already been involved. Sarah, we need to talk before you go to your classroom. The news crew? Got here at 7 a.m. They'd been asking students and parents about the teacher involved in the insurance fraud scandal. Linda Martinez had been principal for 12 years, and I'd never seen her look this uncomfortable. Sarah, the district office called. You're being placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of the investigation. The words felt surreal. Linda, you know me. I've been here for 6 years. I sponsor the after-school reading program. I know exactly who you are. But Channel 12 is calling you, the scheming ex-wife who manipulated the system, and we've already had 3 parents call asking if their children are safe in your classroom. Linda's voice was gentle but firm. I'm sorry, Sarah. My hands are tied. Walking into the school under administrative leave felt like a perp walk. The news camera followed me through the front doors, and I could hear the reporter's voice narrating my march of shame for the morning broadcast. Janet called as I was cleaning out my desk drawer. Sarah, we have bigger problems. The DA's office just filed formal charges, insurance fraud in the first degree, filing a false claim, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Conspiracy? With who? That's the interesting part. They're claiming you conspired with Marcus to stage the property destruction for the insurance payout. Janet's voice was tight with stress. The theory is that you two planned the whole thing together, then had a falling out over how to split the money. I sat down hard in my desk chair, staring at the reading corner where I'd spent countless hours helping third graders discover chapter books. That's insane. Marcus tried to kill me with a crowbar. The prosecutor thinks that was Marcus getting angry when you tried to keep all the insurance money for yourself. Papers rustled on Janet's end of the call. Sarah, they're offering a plea deal. Plead guilty to filing a false claim, pay full restitution to State Farm, and serve 18 months probation. Through my classroom window, I could see the news van repositioning for a better shot of the school. Parents were starting to gather in the parking lot, some supportive, but others clearly angry. What if I don't take the plea? Trial. 5 to 10 years if convicted on all charges. Janet paused. Sarah, there's something else. Brittany Henderson hired a publicist. She's doing interviews this afternoon about being the other woman who exposed a criminal conspiracy. My phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Nguyen, * saw the news. Reporters came to building asking about you. Told them you were good neighbor who helped with groceries. Hang in there, sweetie, *. At least one person still believed I wasn't a criminal mastermind. Janet, what are the chances Marcus takes a deal and testifies against me? Hi. His lawyer called this morning. Marcus is willing to cooperate fully with the fraud investigation in exchange for reduced charges on the breaking and entering. Janet's voice was grim. He's going to claim you manipulated him into burning your property by telling him it was worthless, knowing he'd do it out of spite. The reading corner blurred as tears finally came. 6 years of teaching, gone. My reputation, destroyed. My fresh start, turning into a criminal conviction. But as I packed up my coffee mug and the thank you cards from students, one thought crystallized with perfect clarity. Marcus had won, but he'd also made one final mistake. He was about to find out exactly how ruthless I could be when I had nothing left to lose. The plea hearing was scheduled for Thursday at 2 p.m., but Wednesday night brought a phone call that changed everything. Sarah, it's Danny. Marcus's brother sounded exhausted. I'm still in town, staying at the Marriott downtown. We need to meet. Danny, my lawyer said not to talk to anyone connected to Marcus without her present. Your lawyer needs to hear this too. Can you meet me tomorrow morning? Before your hearing? Danny's voice dropped to almost a whisper. I found something in Marcus's stuff. Something that changes everything. Janet agreed to meet at her office at 8 a.m., despite the fact that her insurance company had dropped her after the break-in damage exceeded her policy limits. Her temporary office was a cramped space above a sandwich shop, but it had a conference table and a working coffee maker. Danny looked like he hadn't slept in days. He set a manila folder on the table between us with shaking hands. I went through Marcus's apartment yesterday, trying to clean up before the landlord evicts him. Found this hidden behind his dresser. Inside the folder were insurance documents, not mine, but Marcus's. Homeowners' policies, personal property inventories, and appraisal forms dating back 3 years. But these weren't standard insurance papers. Jesus Christ, Janet breathed, scanning the first page. These are inflated claims. Look at this, Marcus claimed a stolen laptop worth $4,000 that he bought for $800. There's more. Danny pulled out additional forms. He's been filing false claims for years. Stolen bicycles that were never stolen, damaged furniture that was already broken when he bought it, even a flooded basement that never actually flooded. I stared at a claim form dated 18 months ago. He reported my grandmother's jewelry stolen during a break-in. But I had that jewelry, I've been wearing it since we separated. Sarah, look at the dates. Janet was cross-referencing forms with a calendar. This pattern goes back to 2019. Marcus has been systematically defrauding insurance companies for at least 4 years. Danny rubbed his face with both hands. There's something else. Rick didn't just help Marcus track you down. They've been running a whole operation together. Rick identifies high-value items in county property records, then Marcus finds ways to lose them for insurance payouts. How many claims are we talking about? Janet asked. 17 over 4 years. Total fraudulent payouts of approximately $89,000. Danny looked directly at me. Sarah, my brother isn't some heartbroken ex-husband who snapped. He's a career criminal who saw your divorce as one more opportunity to cash in. The implications hit me like a freight train. The recordings Brittany provided. Marcus knew he was recording you. He was building evidence to make you look like the mastermind while he played the victim. Janet was already making notes. Sarah, this completely changes your case. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia at State Farm, * Sarah, need to speak with you immediately. New information has come to light regarding your claim. Please call ASAP *. I showed Janet the message. She looked at Danny. How many people know about these documents? Just us. But Marcus's arraignment is this afternoon too, and his lawyer thinks he's negotiating from a position of strength. Danny leaned forward. Sarah, I need you to know, I loved my brother, but what he did to you was unforgivable. These documents prove he's been planning to destroy your life since the day you filed for divorce. Janet was already dialing Patricia's number. Patricia? Janet Kim, Sarah Chen's attorney. We have some information about Marcus Chen that's going to interest both you and the district attorney's office. While Janet spoke with Patricia, I studied Marcus's fraudulent claims. The pattern was sophisticated, never too much at once, always different types of losses, spread across multiple insurance companies. The stolen laptop. Damaged furniture from a moving company that didn't exist. Even a claim for sentimental family photographs destroyed in a kitchen fire that the fire department had no record of responding to. He's been stealing from insurance companies for years, I said to Danny. And now he tried to frame me for the same thing. The difference is, Marcus actually committed fraud. Your postcards were just a bad investment with wishful thinking. Janet hung up with Patricia. Sarah, State Farm is dropping all charges against you. They want to focus on prosecuting Marcus for his pattern of systematic fraud. My phone rang, Detective Morrison. Sarah, we just executed a search warrant on Marcus Chen's apartment. Found enough evidence of insurance fraud to keep him in prison for the next decade. Can you come in this afternoon to give a statement? For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. What about the plea hearing? Cancelled. You're no longer a defendant, you're a witness. Detective Morrison's voice carried a note of satisfaction. Sarah, Marcus Chen just became the state's #1 target for organized insurance fraud. And Brittany Henderson might be looking at charges too, since she helped him access confidential financial information. As I hung up, Danny looked at me with something that might have been relief. Sarah, I'm sorry my family put you through this. Marcus always found a way to make everyone else pay for his mistakes. Through the window of Janet's temporary office, I could see Roosevelt Elementary in the distance. My classroom, my students, my career, all of it damaged by Marcus's war against me. But for the first time since this nightmare started, I had hoped that maybe, just maybe, I could rebuild what he tried to destroy. The call from Channel 12 came at 6:47 p.m. while I was heating up leftover Chinese food in my apartment, the first real meal I'd attempted in days. Ms. Chen? This is Amanda Foster again. We've obtained some very interesting documents about your ex-husband's insurance history. Would you like to comment before our story airs tonight at 11? I nearly dropped my phone. What documents? Marcus Chen's fraudulent insurance claims dating back 4 years. $89,000 in false payouts. Amanda's voice carried the excitement of a reporter who'd stumbled onto a much bigger story than expected. Our investigation shows a pattern of systematic fraud involving county database access and falsified loss reports. Janet had warned me this would happen. Once Danny turned over Marcus's hidden files, the story would explode beyond our control. But hearing it from a news reporter made it feel surreal. I can't comment on ongoing investigations, I said, using the phrase Janet had made me practice. What about Brittany Henderson's claims that you're the real mastermind? She's scheduled to appear on our broadcast tonight, insisting Marcus was manipulated into helping you defraud State Farm. My stomach dropped. Brittany's going on TV? Live interview at 10:30. She says she has evidence proving Marcus was coerced into participating in your scheme. Amanda paused. Ms. Chen, this is your chance to tell your side of the story. I hung up and immediately called Janet. Brittany's doing a live TV interview tonight. She's going to claim I manipulated Marcus into committing fraud. Absolutely not. We're not responding through media. Janet's voice was sharp. Sarah, Brittany Henderson is about to make the biggest mistake of her life. Let her hang herself on live television. But at 10:25 p.m., I was glued to Channel 12 despite Janet's advice to ignore it. Amanda Foster sat across from Brittany in the studio, and I had to admit Marcus's girlfriend cleaned up well for television. Professional blazer, perfectly styled hair, the kind of composed expression that suggested victimized innocence. Brittany, you've known Marcus Chen for 8 months. In your opinion, is he capable of systematic insurance fraud? Absolutely not. Brittany's voice carried just the right amount of indignation. Marcus is honest to a fault. He was devastated when he discovered Sarah had been manipulating him, using his anger about the divorce to further her insurance scheme. You're saying Sarah Chen orchestrated her ex-husband's destruction of her property? She admitted it to him. We have recordings of Sarah specifically telling Marcus which items were worthless and which were real antiques, essentially providing him with a script for what to destroy. Brittany leaned forward earnestly. Marcus thought he was just getting petty revenge on his cheating ex-wife. He had no idea she was using him to commit felony fraud. My phone was buzzing with texts from coworkers and friends who were watching. The story Amanda Foster was presenting painted me as a criminal mastermind who'd manipulated my abusive ex-husband into becoming my unwitting accomplice. Then Amanda asked the question that changed everything. Brittany, how long have you been helping Marcus access confidential financial information through county databases? The color drained from Brittany's face on live television. I'm sorry, what? Our investigation shows Marcus's cousin Rick Chin used county IT systems to access private financial records. But Rick's supervisor confirmed someone from Morrison Financial Group provided additional authentication credentials. Amanda consulted her notes. Specifically, someone in Marcus's department with access to cross-referenced credit and banking databases. Brittany's composure cracked visibly. I don't know what you're talking about. Morrison Financial Group's internal investigation identified unusual database queries from your employee login, Brittany. Queries for Sarah Chen's banking records, insurance policies, and credit history. Amanda's voice was relentless now. Queries that were then shared with Rick Chen to facilitate stalking and harassment. I watched Brittany realize she'd walked into a trap on live television. Her face went from pale to flushed to panicked in the space of 30 seconds. I think I need to speak with a lawyer, Brittany said, reaching to remove her microphone. One more question, Amanda said smoothly. Were you aware that Marcus Chen had been filing fraudulent insurance claims for 4 years before he met you? The interview ended with Brittany Henderson fleeing the studio on live television, leaving Amanda Foster to deliver the real bombshell. Marcus wasn't just a vindictive ex-husband. He was a career criminal, and his girlfriend had just confessed to helping him on statewide TV. The call from Principal Martinez came at 7:23 a.m. on Friday morning, exactly 1 week after I'd been placed on administrative leave. Sarah, the school board met in emergency session last night. We'd like you back in your classroom on Monday. Linda's voice carried a warmth I hadn't heard since this nightmare began. The district realizes we may have acted hastily based on incomplete information. Through my apartment window, I could see the news vans finally pulling away from Roosevelt Elementary. After Brittany's spectacular meltdown on live television, the story had shifted completely. I was no longer the scheming ex-wife, but the victim of an elaborate fraud scheme orchestrated by Marcus and enabled by his girlfriend's corporate access. What about the parents who were concerned? I asked. Funny thing about that. Turns out most of the concerned parent calls came from fake numbers traced back to Brittany Henderson's phone. Linda's tone was dry. The real parents have been asking when you're coming back. Mrs. Patterson specifically said her daughter Emma has been asking every day where Ms. Chen went. After I hung up, I called Janet with the news. Her temporary office above the sandwich shop had become command central for what she was now calling the most satisfying case reversal of her career. Sarah, you'll love this, Janet said, the sound of shuffling papers audible through the phone. Marcus pled guilty to 17 counts of insurance fraud yesterday. He's looking at 8 years minimum, and State Farm is pursuing civil damages for the full $89,000 plus penalties. What about Brittany? Morrison Financial Group fired her Wednesday morning, and the FBI arrested her yesterday for conspiracy to commit fraud and unauthorized access to financial databases. Janet's satisfaction was evident. Turns out helping your boyfriend stalk his ex-wife using corporate databases is a federal crime. Who knew? The irony was perfect. Marcus had tried to destroy my life by exposing my insurance fraud, only to expose his own far more extensive criminal enterprise. His attempt to frame me had unraveled everything he built over 4 years of systematic theft. My phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Nguyen, asterisk saw the good news on Channel 12. Making photo to celebrate. Come down at 6, asterisk. Then another message, this one from Patricia at State Farm, asterisk Sarah, your claim has been fully processed. Check for $1,847 will arrive Monday, actual value of destroyed items per independent appraisal. No hard feelings, asterisk. I laughed out loud at Patricia's message. $1,800 was a far cry from the $15,000 I'd hoped for, but it was honest money for honestly destroyed property. Marcus's arson had cost him everything and netted me exactly what my belongings were actually worth. The final call came from Detective Morrison at 4:15 p.m. Sarah, thought you'd want to know, Marcus Chen was sentenced this afternoon. 8 years, no possibility of parole for 6. Judge Robertson said it was one of the most calculating fraud schemes she'd ever seen. What did Marcus say? Nothing in court. But his lawyer told reporters Marcus felt betrayed by everyone who was supposed to support him. Detective Morrison chuckled. Even in prison, he's convinced he's the victim. That evening, sitting in Mrs. Nguyen's apartment sharing homemade pho and watching the sunset through her kitchen window, I realized Marcus had actually given me the greatest gift possible. His vindictive attempt to destroy my fresh start had burned away everything false in my life, leaving only what was real and worth keeping. My job was waiting for me on Monday. My legal troubles had evaporated into Marcus's much larger criminal problems. And for the first time in years, I was completely free of the man who'd spent so long trying to control my story. Marcus had burned my belongings to hurt me, but all he'd really done was light the fuse on his own destruction. Sometimes the best revenge is just stepping back and letting someone destroy themselves. My fresh start was finally, truly mine.